Dorothy vs. Oz by Neil Hartley. Part 3. Despite her fears, Dorothy awoke from a restful and undisturbed slumber. Toto was already awake, standing by the door, looking back at her. "Oh, very well then. Just a minute, boy." She slid out of bed, dressed, clipped on her equipment, and put on the so-called magic boots. Only when she felt sufficiently ready did she push the drawers out of the way, peer through the door to ensure she wasn't about to be ambushed, and allow the dog to trot out. She followed him, wondering what the day held. A loud rasping noise turned out to be Chubby, fast asleep on the sofa. The dwarf woke abruptly and with much spluttering when Dorothy scavenged some cereal and milk from the kitchen. "Good sleep, Chubbs?" she inquired, spooning a mouthful of rice crispiness into her mouth. Chubby rubbed his eyes and smacked his lips before answering. "Truly, mistress," he said, "never before have I encountered such a luxurious sleeping mat. This must be the abode of a king, or someone of the highest social order." "I doubt it. Here." Dorothy pushed a bowl of cereal towards him. "The most important meal of the day, allegedly." The midget wandered over and peered cautiously at the contents. "Why does it make that sound?" he asked. "Oh, I must make toilet." So saying, he rushed outside. Dorothy shrugged and finished her breakfast before putting the bowl in the sink, out of habit. Chubby eventually returned and picked up his bowl. Watched by Dorothy, he spooned down the food, cautiously at first, and then more enthusiastically, milk dribbling down his chin in the process. "So, how far away is this fabled city of Oz?" she asked eventually. Swallowing hurriedly, Chubby pointed out of the window with his spoon. "It lies at the end of the road," he informed her, "as do all roads." "All roads lead to Oz, eh?" she mused. "Sounds familiar somehow. How far is it?" "A goodly distance is all I know," Chubby replied. "Through some dark and dire lands, mistress. The journey will be fraught with danger." He chewed reflectively on another mouthful of cereal. "I shall return to the village to gather supplies and weapons." "Weapons?" Dorothy asked. "Is there no law and order in Oz, then?" "Yes, of course there is," he replied. "The bitch took care of that." He looked at her and her new shoes pointedly for a moment. "Though travel was discouraged, and so remains highly dangerous. We'll be lucky to survive the day." So saying, he jammed one last spoonful of breakfast into his mouth, stood up, and waddled out of the door, leaving Dorothy wondering exactly what she'd fallen into. By the time Chubby returned, Dorothy had done some supply gathering of her own, packing as much food as she could find into a backpack that had been in a cupboard. She had also salvaged a number of other items, including a large flashlight. "Are you ready, mistress?" the midget leader asked. Eyeing him up and down, she nodded. "Yes, though apparently not as much as you are." The little man now carried his own backpack, though perhaps that word didn't do it justice, as the enormous pile of gear on his back probably weighed more than he did. He was also leaning on a walking stick, and was almost bent double under the weight of his equipment. "I see you've decided to take the kitchen sink too," Dorothy said. "Are you sure you'll be able to carry all that?" "No problem, mistress," Chubby beamed back. Shrugging, it wasn't her problem, Dorothy put a red-booted foot forward. "Very well then, let's follow the yellow brick road," she said. Dorothy vs. Oz, Chapter 2, Travels. Outside was fresh and sunny, and Dorothy, Toto, and her small companion followed the road as it meandered gently through pleasant fields, full of some sort of tall green crop that rippled in the breeze. The sun drifted up through a primary blue sky, dotted with clouds too fluffy to believe. It all seemed very peaceful and innocent, and she said as much. "Oh, well, mistress," Chubby explained, "this is still within the town limits. Besides, this crop is for the city, and under the watchful eye of the bitch and her minions." He paused, eyeing her boots again. "At least it was. I suppose—" He tailed off, thinking unaccustomed thoughts, no doubt. "What will happen now she's dead?" Dorothy asked, watching Toto gambolling through the long grass by the side of the road. The midget scratched his head. "I'm not sure, but someone will probably notice at some point, and then, well, I suppose there'll have to be a replacement." He shrugged. "I don't think it's ever happened before." Dorothy raised an eyebrow. "Never?" "Not in my lifetime, no." "In any case, it's all very nice. I don't see what you're worried about," said Dorothy. "Oh, there's plenty of rough terrain ahead, mistress," he assured her, "outside of the town limits and the protected zone, with many a strange and twisted creature patiently waiting to waylay the innocent traveller." He patted his sturdy walking stick. "It's a good job you have me along to protect you." Dorothy replied. They carried on, and soon the pleasant fields and greenery became monotonous, extending as far as the eye could see, over flat or very gently rolling slopes. The sun rose higher, and it became warmer, though not unpleasantly so, and despite the apparently well-maintained road, they encountered no other travellers. There was the odd bird tweeting from within the hedge that ran alongside their path, and once she thought she saw what could have been a rabbit. But other than that, the only living things were her and Chubby, and Toto, of course. It began to get on her nerves. Despite her earlier worries, Chubby seemed to have had no problem keeping up, striding along with his massive backpack, and it was Dorothy who suggested a rest first. Chubby looked around carefully and then nodded. "I think we're still in the safe zone. A small break could be a good idea," he said. "Think?" Dorothy scanned the area afresh. She'd spent the last half an hour or so mulling everything over in her head, and hadn't been paying much attention to the scenery. Now she looked more closely, and she saw that the still unidentified crops were still prevalent, but they looked a little less uniform, a little more unkempt, and for the first time clusters of dark trees could be seen here and there, squatting in groups, somehow looking like they were loitering with intent. "You sit here." Chubby indicated a fallen tree trunk on the side of the road. "I'll scout ahead a little more, see what's round the next bend." He gestured ahead, where the road wound around a slope and into an area obscured by foliage. "Very well, then." Dorothy slipped off her backpack and rummaged around for a chocolate bar she'd liberated from the fallen house. Chubby took off his own giant pack and set it next to hers. "I'll be back," he stated, in an unconscious Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, before marching off down the road. "What a helpful chap," she said to herself. "I must remember to thank him." Perching on her seat, Dorothy chewed on the slightly melted chocolate. She'd just finished the last of her snack and was wondering about local littering laws when the little man came racing back around the corner at, what was for him, high speed. "Run, mistress!" he shouted in breathless tones. "Run! It will—" He stopped trying to shout and concentrated on increasing his speed. Dorothy stood up as another form came into view, moving in a strange bounding gait, far faster than Chubby's. It looked like a cross between a lanky zombie and a dishevelled hobo, dressed in rags as it was. What appeared to be small branches protruded from under its garb. Toto was standing by her now, a low growl emanating from the large dog. "Hold, boy," she commanded, standing her ground and taking a grip of his collar. "Raw!" Chubby called out again, just as the zombie hobo thing took a massive jump, landing squarely on the little man's back, ramming him into the stone bricks of the road. Before Dorothy could react, it bent low and took a giant bite out of the midget's neck, sending blood and gore everywhere. Chubby gave a last strangled cry and went limp. "Hey!" Dorothy said. "That was my friend!" The creature looked up, seemingly noticing her for the first time. Its pasty face was splattered crimson, and flesh hung from its wicked, oversized jaws. With a growl, it leaped off the corpse of the dwarf and bounded towards her. Dorothy waited only a moment before pulling out her Glock and shooting it in the leg.